Okay, we're on. Hello, everyone. Good afternoon, and thanks for joining us on the spot again. Today, we've got some really special guests with us. We have Matthew van der Linden, who's the Chief Executive of Flow Power. G'day, Matthew.
G'day, Nat. How you going?
I'm great, thanks. And we also have Daniel van der Linden, who is Matthew's son. And yeah, we'll be hearing some stories from him too. Hey, Daniel, how you going?
I'm good. How are you going?
I'm good. I'm good. So thanks, guys, for jumping on the spot. Yeah, we're really keen to maybe jump into some history about flow power and get stuck into some of the cool, interesting technologies that we've been working on. Guys, today the subject matter is data and insights. But before we get stuck into the data, we wanted to, I suppose, provide some history around how Flow Power is focused on providing data to its customers and providing insights to its customers, and some of the cool technologies that we've been developing over the years to enable that. But I might just ask, so Matthew, can you give us a little bit of background about yourself, and I guess maybe also just touch on the kWatch controller, which is going to be a core part of today's session.
Sure. So yeah, just briefly, I've been doing this for quite a long time, for close to 25 years now, actually. Started out with an energy management business called Utilicore, and our role there was very much to try and reduce customers' energy usage. And through that business, we started to put customers on the spot market, on the pool, and manage their loads, and very much focused on trying to control customers' load and reduce costs. So working with them behind the meter to implement solutions. But when we started to put customers on the spot, we decided we should do that in a big way and get a retail license, and really took that forward strongly. So that's sort of what I've been doing. And I guess through that journey, I love technology. I love making stuff. I do a lot of programming. And I've always wanted to, well, I always have sort of focused on that technology aspect of the business. So the controller is, what we're going to talk about today is a good topic for me in terms of being able to just talk about how I think it's critical to the energy industry and the future of the energy industry. And it's not so much the control, it's more just technologies critical to that future of the energy industry. So, yeah.
Great. And so thanks for that, Matthew. And Daniel, I suppose in your field here, with the controller in particular, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and how you're involved with the technology?
Yeah, so I've been working on the controller design production since I was in high school, actually. As soon as Matthew got me working, he got me working.
Yep.
It started out
cheap labor.
Cheap labor, yeah, free labor a little bit. Started out in the workshop at home, just doing prototypes, doing proof of concepts, that sort of thing. And it's gone to the point now where we have a large team and hundreds of controllers built. And yeah, it's quite cool.
Yeah,
interestingly,
it is quite cool.
Interestingly, Daniel's about 25 years old as well, so he's sort of my business mascot.
Yeah, the mascot of the company.
No, it's great to hear these stories too, and it kind of reminds us of the roots of where Flow Power began, and only joining the business under 2 years ago now. Yeah, it's amazing when you look back 10 years ago, in terms of where you're sitting at the moment, Daniel, with all those controllers behind you. It's quite where we've gone from that first controller that was created. But guys, again, thanks for jumping online. We're going to jump into the next quadrant, or the next slide, which are those 4 quadrants that we typically refer to before the session. And so just to highlight, we are sitting in this bottom grey quadrant over here behind the meter, and mainly because this is a controller. It's a physical device that gets installed behind the meter on the client's site. But ultimately, the key driver with the controller and why we're doing this is to connect the energy market to every single one of our customer sites. And throughout the session, we'll go through the details as to why we feel that that's important and the benefits associated with that. But ultimately, what we are striving towards really is having a device that allows the customer to see what's happening across the site in real time, but also be able to correlate that with what's happening on the energy market in real time, and then enable a more sophisticated energy management strategy. So, so with that, I might ask Matthew, could you tell us a little bit about what inspired the initial creation of the controller and why you felt that there was a gap in the market that led to developing the.
Yeah, sure. I think the key thing here is well, if you just sit back and look at the nature of the commodity in the industry we work in, the commodity that we trade or that we use, the electricity, it's very unique. Like it's very difficult to store, and we're only just starting to have that happen. It's literally produced at the millisecond that it's consumed. So out of all commodities in the world, it's completely unique in terms of how it gets used and how it gets produced, consumed, and transported. And it's actually one of those commodities that is actually ripe for disruption in effect. Energy is one of those things that technology should be able to dramatically influence. So I've sort of always, as we've developed the business over the years, always had this frustration to sort of do more in the technology side, because you can do so much more. You can do a lot with electricity. You can make some very complex systems, and the technology, things like IoT and so forth, are coming along very rapidly, making all this much more possible. We've got renewables coming in, and that's another aspect that's fascinating to look at, because I don't think we've actually got a choice other than to bring technology in a much stronger way. If we don't bring it in, there's probably a way the market will get through it, but it's probably going to be really expensive if you have to just keep gold plating things, so that you literally have to double the quantity generation in the market, unless you can bring in other solutions to make it more efficient. So the controller sort of came about through the recognition of that need to try and develop something to fill that gap. And if I go back, we've been doing it for a while now, and we've had ups and downs and trying to make it work, Daniel, haven't we? It's not always worked. There's a few versions that never got out the front door. But it was always a search to try and find something to solve a problem. The general concepts that with energy. My general view is if you've got visibility of it, one of the first things you need is visibility of what's going on. So the controller was very much designed around trying to provide live data, and that's very much like a behavioural change type goal to sort of. The general view is if we can give you the live data, then you'll start to take more interest in your energy and potentially start to do things differently. So it's always been a strong goal. And then, if we go back to, you've got to be able to transfer a lot of data. So concepts like IoT were key, and the internet and 4GX and, even NBN in those early years, knowing that was coming down the road, meant that this was all becoming very possible.
Yeah, and to add to that, even today, there's a standard either 15 but typically 30-minute interval of which most energy meters report to, and with 5-minute settlement on the horizon and all these other things that are starting to make energy management a lot more granular and a lot more detailed. I guess part of the reason why live data we're seeing is so important is because you can start to see what's happening at that far more granular level. But also, I guess in addition to that, when we are trying to understand how our energy use correlates with the spot market, a 30-minute interval won't necessarily cut it. And when you're looking at looking at demand response, spot responsive, and looking at how we navigate and coordinate these elements, the controller, I suppose, is a key component to bringing all of that together.
Yeah, it really is. And as we go into the future, it's going to become so much more important. You know, we know we already face significant grid stability issues, for example, you know, with voltage control and FCAS control and these sorts of things as well, which we can already see. And just like even the problem that rooftop solar causes on the market, you know, you've got gigawatts of solar out in the market that there's no control over. So we end up in a situation where we've got excess energy that's causing grid instability, but no control over it. So the idea that you've got to bring technology in to start to be able to do those sorts of things is critical. And that's one of the things that controller will do, and numerous other technologies will come in and do the same thing. But what's clear to me anyway is that it's going to be a very, very strong part of our future. So that idea of live data is like one of their first stepping stones, but it's going to go a lot further than that as things develop in the industry, without a doubt.
Yeah. Great,
Yeah.
great. So Daniel, can I jump to you and can you tell us a little bit about what is the kWatch controller and yeah, what is it that we're actually talking about here?
What is the controller? Well, from a high level, the controller is actually relatively simple. It's just a device to get data from and send data to an industrial site. Obviously, we use it around electricity mostly, but technically it could be used for any type of data in any direction.
Yep.
If we want to talk about, yeah, there's a photo of it. In terms of specific hardware, I've got one here. So this is the box it comes in currently. So most clients don't get to see this because the install partners put it in for them. But this is how it comes. It's 2 devices that generally get installed as standard. This big picture of me and my father there. No one needs to see that there. So that's basically the pair, those 2. This is the controller itself. This handles basically processing and communication back to kWatch into the internet. And then this is input and output. So in the current design, we can put as many of these as we need. So bigger site, lots of equipment, you might have multiple of them. They can be connected wired or wirelessly. Yeah, and then that's kind of the controller. It's relatively simple, really. Just a little PC in here that runs everything.
So I know it does. Just briefly, some of the design goals for it were to, you know, one of the key goals of the controller was management of energy, and I don't just mean at an individual site level. We also mean at like a state level or a company level, a portfolio level. So that concept of being able to have 50 of these out across all your sites and be able to, broadly speaking, probably to the minute, see what your load is and manage that load according to your output. So, and that's one of the key things that it will do. So it's actually not that much in the hardware. It's more just in the design of the software and how we configure it and how we plug it all in, isn't it, Dan?
Yeah, it is. It's absolutely 10% of development has been hardware, 90% has been software, and software development will probably never end. Once you have that connection to the site, sending data in and getting data out, it's almost limitless what you can do with it.
Yeah, but that portfolio concept is an interesting one because you and it's key as well. So if you have a large customer that's got a large number of sites and they might have a PPA, so a wind contract, to manage their load effectively, they need to know a couple of things. They need to know the output of their external wind farm and how much it's generating. They'll need to know how much they're consuming at any point in time. And the difference between those two is what they're trying to manage at any point in time. And then the third point they need to know is the price, to know what they should do about that difference. So if the price is high, you want that difference as small as possible. If the price is really low, you probably want that difference as high as possible. And that's sort of what the controller tries to facilitate, the ability to manage that. So,
and where we get into concepts now of it's not just about managing your energy use, because energy management also now includes trying to maximize your energy use during certain times of the day, and so during those times when you're referring to, Matthew, where there's excess solar or excess renewables being pumped into the grid, typically during those moments, that is when the spot price is usually at its lowest. Almost to the point where it can even go and shift negative down, down as low as -1,000. And it's during those moments where if you're consuming a lot more, then technically you're being paid that much to consume every unit of energy, which traditional energy management for peak off-peak rates don't necessarily account for those types of opportunities to reduce your energy costs.
Yep.
So that's fascinating. The other fascinating thing as well, and you touched on this too, Matthew, was the number of solar PV systems currently out there. Those gigawatts of solar that's pumping energy into it, doesn't have any control, and so there is an opportunity here, and we are working on this at the moment to have the controller enable or inhibit the amount of generation being outputted by these solar PV systems, because ultimately those that operate those generators are having to pay for the right to export to the grid during those moments.
Yeah.
And
it's a crazy system at the moment. The fact that you've got gigawatts of solar installed that has no level of control. It's like putting another Loyang power station online that you can't control. In the nature of a electricity market like this, it's just not a good design. Like it's one of those things that is quite amazing when you sit back and look at what's going on. So yeah, even if you take a step further back and sort of say generation generally operates in complete isolation of consumption, that's also a bit of a crazy thing in a market like this. So much of what we're doing is about just trying to bring the market and just show a different way of doing things. And we do believe that by using our controller or even there's many other technologies can provide that live data as well. All of that will help the market transition to and make possible a net zero carbon energy future, which is where we're heading. So there's many things about the market that are not quite logical, and a lot of what we're doing is focused very much on trying to work out what the market needs to be able to change some of those things, like peak off peak pricing and fixed contract pricing is quite illogical in the marketplace. In such a dynamic market, in a market where the price changes every 5 minutes and you've got a price signal that doesn't literally change all year. It's a very interesting structure at the moment. But the other thing that's probably worth just briefly mentioning is the market is actually well designed, like the NEM itself and the spot market, in terms of its fundamental design, it's very well suited to what we're trying to, what we are doing. So this is not revolutionary when it comes to how the market was designed to work. So it was all designed around this. A thing I learned recently, or didn't learn recently, but one thing people may not be aware in Victoria, for example, every single smart meter has been installed with the ability to obtain live data from it. So when you look at the design of the market, it's actually been well designed for exactly what we're doing. It's just there hasn't been that many retailers out there vigorously pursuing this connected market. And that's sort of what we're trying to do.
Ultimately, that's where Piper Gap is, because those market signals ultimately are not reaching the end user to do about it. And that's where currently there's that disconnect in the ability to respond to what's happening to the grid or in the market to support the grid. But
definitely.
it's a good point. We have a question from Chris here, and we'll get into more questions, guys. So please, if you have something on your mind, pop it into the chat box, and we can address that, or in the question box, and we can address that towards the end of the show. But Chris asks, where is the intelligence? Who sees the information, and how do they decide what to do with it?
Well, the customer sees the information without a doubt. The whole idea is essentially delivering the data to the customer. In its basic form of providing live data, that's more about an educational process of getting customers to understand and start to take an interest in their data. The intelligence, you might suggest, comes next when customers look to implement solutions on that data, against that data, where you might be starting to control loads or schedule pumping or using our forecasting methods to where we forecast forward pricing in the market, you start to use that to schedule your operations. So there's probably multiple stages to this journey for customers that we see them take as they start to get involved, and as they start to try and use that data to get more efficient, or what we call price efficient, which is a term we commonly use. Price efficiency means, do you use more power when the price is low and less power when the price is high? And that's it's one of our core principles that we try to get them to do. So the intelligence aspect comes into helping customers get better and better at that. So
yep, and sorry, it's a good point. I just want to make a point there. So Matthew's referring to the price efficiency adjustment number, and I believe that was week 5 where we do cover that. And there was a lot of interest in that particular session too. But I guess just in addition to what the customer decides on how to use that information, we totally acknowledge that getting live data, aligning it with the spot market, and understanding what opportunities exist within your site to identify cost savings can sometimes be a complex process in being able to collate all this information. But a lot of the time it doesn't have to be, but the nature of it can make it complex. And so that's where we do have an engineering team in-house that's driven to support the customers digest the information, understand what it means, but then more importantly, how it applies to their site.
Yeah.
And so it's not just an assumption that here's your live data, now go forth and achieve some outcomes. It is an iterative process. It is a bit of an education process that we also have as we learn more about our customer sites.
Yeah. It takes time, and there are things in that automation journey that can be quite challenging. But some things like inhibit the solar when the price is negative is not overly complicated. If you've got backup generation, scheduling that to start during a high price event is not overly complicated. There is, depending on how your setup is, and if you're an irrigator, then sometimes it can be surprisingly simple. And then as you go further down that road, it gets to different degrees of complexity. So, but we generally, we're not trying to do this in a niche sense. That's probably one of the things that, from a philosophical point of view, when you can go in and install automation systems, and they can be extremely complex and advanced and do some amazing things, and we can do all that through Nat's team. But a big part of what we're trying to do is not niche. We really want to make this normal across the entire market. So our philosophy is to, first and foremost, for every single flow power customer, is get a controller, and that's now standard as part of our package. You don't pay for the controller. You don't pay for the live data when you sign up. You just get it as a retail customer, and the hope, and then that's sort of in that philosophy of trying to sort of make this data delivery normal, and trying to get customers more engaged, and then they take the next step as they go down that pathway. So yeah.
So guys, I guess just to do a full circle here, and go back to some of Flow Power's drivers behind why we're pursuing the continuous development of the controller. Ultimately, it really is about connecting the market to the customer's site and enabling the customer to see how their energy use is aligned with their retail structure, and what options they have to utilize their energy use as well as their renewables and generation to ideally reduce their energy costs. And in being able to do so, what that does mean is that they're managing their energy use with respect to the spot market that supports the grid. And by supporting the grid, it's also enabling more renewables to be injected onto the grid as we work towards a more reliable system. And so that's ultimately why we're pursuing the continuous development of the controller. Matthew had it for more than 10 years. I think Daniel's short career has been centered around the controller today. currently going to university to figure out how else we can start to build on this controller and its functions. So it is an extremely important component of FlowPower's current model, as well as where we're heading as a business and an energy management company / retailer in the future. So so I guess I just want to close it at that. Matthew, did you have any extra comments?
Yeah, I think it's this slide where it talks about some of the why we do it. It's really, we did the price efficiency adjustment thing previously. We talk about a transition to net zero carbon energy future, and that's sort of one of our really strong philosophy and goals is how do we transition the energy market to that energy future, not just Flow Power, not just our customers, but the whole market is sort of one of our goals. So when we're looking at where we spend our energy and what we do, that's sort of what drives a lot of what we do. So why do we have such a large engineering department for a retailer? We've got, it's by comparison to other retailers, it's a huge investment for us. It's it's material costs, like 30-40% of our costs or something like that, 20-30-40%. We've got a large development area that's developing controllers, and we've got a large account management area. And that's because we know that we've got to get customers down, we've got to help customers down this curve of understanding the energy market. The reason we developed the controller wasn't to develop a piece of hardware we could sell. So in our assessment of, whether the piece of hardware was commercial, it didn't really come into it. What came into it, does it support our commercial model for a transition to net zero and a successful retail business? So our goal isn't really to make money off the hardware, it's to help customers on this pathway. The PEA on the spot that you did is the same concept. So our products are designed to facilitate this transition. So you need customers to be rewarded for when they get more involved. And that's what the PEA does. That's what our Power Active product does. And you need you need to bring in more renewables. So you need to give a pathway for customers to get directly involved to buy more renewables, and at the same time encourage all customers to manage how they use their power more. So you can bring in more renewables as well. So yeah, that big picture is really important to us as we look at what we're doing. And our hope is that as we demonstrate our success, and the success is measured by customers coming on board, obviously in adopting the product and overcoming a slightly different way of purchasing energy. Our hope is it will drive other retailers to assess their view of the future, and I think we're already making progress there, it's actually really exciting. We're seeing many other retailers already look at what we're doing, and in some ways adopting some of it. So yeah, it's these things you're speaking about are very well aligned to where we're going, what we're doing. Yeah,
absolutely. Exciting times.
Yeah, it is. It is actually really exciting. Sales teams going gangbusters at the moment as they approach the end of the term, and lots of engagement, and customers, they're not shy of what we're doing. I think they're very much on board with it, which is very exciting to see.
Yeah. Yep. We might just go to a few questions here, and another Chris asks, do you need a kWatch if live signals are available from the smart meter?
I can answer that one. Basically, you don't necessarily need a kWatch, but you need some sort of hardware. So the smart meters, the live data that's available is only available through a second piece of hardware that reads it from the meter wirelessly. It's quite a cool technology. But on top of that, the controller and kWatch itself, while it does do live data, once you've got that live data, if you then want to go on and start automating things, remote controlling things, that sort of thing, you have the hardware already installed to do that with the controller.
Yeah. And there are many, like there's a
And
lot of
so,
technology coming online at the moment as well. So there are other ways of doing it. And from as a retail perspective, we're not, we do think our controller is a good solution, but it's definitely not the only solution. So
Yeah.
and I guess all the various technologies out there, they have their own nuances about it and their own applications about it. And I guess for our purpose, the driver here is to really connect the customer and the site to the market, and in doing so, provide all the different opportunities to reduce costs and optimize their energy use. But yeah, there are various technologies out there with cool platforms and other bits and pieces as well.
Yep.
Okay. We'll keep going here. We've got a whole bunch of questions from different Chris's, but so thanks, Chris. Can you say a bit more about the practical aspects of the big picture future we're heading for, i.e. your vision and how it will be? All right. So Matthew, we're kind of crystal balling here. Did you want to give us just a minute or two on some of the big picture perspectives you might have across the market?
Give it a go. It's one of those things that it's crystal balling a little, but there's no doubt that if we're going to net zero, it's a very, very different energy market. Most of that energy is not going to be controllable, and it's going to come and go on the as the wind blows and the sun shines. And the reality, in the short term, that's going to be the driving technology, is those two, wind and solar. There will be others that will come along in time, but the wind and solar is well developed and well tested, and it can be rolled out fast, and it's relatively cheap. So you've got a very variable generation load there. Batteries will become a very big part of the future. There's no doubt about that. We're seeing huge drive to reduce those costs, and they're getting close to being worthwhile. So that's a game changer in terms of how the energy industry operates. The ability to store energy is a fundamental shift in everything about the energy industry, about its design, how it operates, how it's operated, and things like IoT, like the controller and the next generation of 5G and so forth in IoT will become significant. I've often wondered, I did this little practice a little while ago, add up the number of mobile phones that exist and the quantity of energy they consume when they charge. I can't remember the number, but it's material. It's tens of megawatts of energy. So why couldn't the future even, in a well-connected future, even control the charging rate of mobile phones in the future based on supply and demand? So that could be the sort of future you end up in. So I don't know. That's some things. Like cars will be a huge thing. Transport's a big one. That's coming very, very rapidly.
Yeah, and some exciting news there about Tesla releasing the two-way charging batteries now. So it's not just about charging the car, but essentially discharging that back into the grid.
Yeah.
So more of those technologies will become more prevalent.
Yeah, and each car is roughly a house. So when you talk about the next energy revolution in terms of transport of energy and for distribution businesses, it's probably going to come from transport, and that's probably going to push the energy use back up again because it's been declining recently. So yeah, there's numerous areas it's going to head, but my strong view is technology a key part of it, and customers are a key part of that energy future. Customers getting a lot more involved. And I think it's just really waiting for the retailer or the industry participants to give the chance for customers to participate. They've really had very little real opportunities to participate in their energy consumption. So I think that's the next, as retailers start to do that, and there's a few out there that are beginning to do it. There's us that are doing it. We've got Amber, that's a small spot electricity retailer that does it. And there's a number of others that offer similar sorts of products as well. So they're coming, and I think once they get here, we'll start to see quicker transitions.
Yeah. Got a technical question. So Daniel, is the kWatch controller Is that the primary system that's required to control elements on site, or can that be used to also interface with other systems and other loads and control platforms?
Yeah, it absolutely is used to integrate with other other systems on site, basically. It's actually not really designed around being the primary control system on site. It's capable of it, but it's not our goal. Our goal is to get data down to site, get data back up from site, do smarts with it down on site. But using the controller for that has a few drawbacks, mostly around Snyder have done millions of dollars of engineering on SCADA systems. They know what they're doing. So you may as well lean off that technology and integrate with it. And it works quite well. We use communication protocol called Modbus mostly. And it's very robust and sort of lets you talk to anything on site through those systems as if you're directly talking to it or through their systems that already exist. So it's
Yeah. So I guess in a nutshell, if it was a more basic, simple control of a generator or a pump or an individual load, those control commands are reasonably straightforward. If it's an entire system that requires it's an existing SCADA, sending a signal to that SCADA to execute a certain command is also reasonably straightforward as well. But we're leveraging the capabilities of what's available on site rather than having to overlay that system.
Some of the key things there is it like SCADA systems can read our system and we can read SCADA systems, so that two-way messaging sort of stuff. Yeah, it's possible.
Yep. I'll take one more question. So
that's another good question there, isn't it?
Yeah. If PowerPower's goal is to help transition to a net zero carbon future, buying on the NEM is largely buying black energy. Is this not helping your purpose?
It's a good question.
Yeah.
I like it. I think
Do you want to give it a go?
Yeah, were you gonna start where?
No, I'm happy to compliment your first take on this.
I think our key goal is to transition the market, and you've got to look at a practical way to transition to a net zero. Now we want to do it as quickly and as rapidly as possible, but you've got to be practical about it. It's going to take some time, and the market has to transition. So we have to get, for example, consumers to be more educated and more involved, so that they can provide more demand response and more reaction to the loads, and then that will allow us to bring in more and more wind and solar. So in the interim, we will need to depend on coal for a period as we start to educate the market and bring in these new technologies. Gas will be an important transition one over the short term to be able to bring in gas peaking, to be able to get that transition there. So do I think it's in conflict? I don't think it's in conflict at all. I think it's a part of the pathway to get to where we need to be. You can't just do it tomorrow. It will take a little bit of time, and it will take education of the market to understand it. It will take testing of new technologies. Batteries they're in place, but they're still new. We don't really know how they're going to impact. And really good examples of why it will take time is look at Northwest Victoria. Had massive problems with connecting solar, fundamentally because it's never been done at this scale before, and there were unexpected stability issues. So you can't just flick a switch. It's going to take time. But we've got to push hard and we've got to push fast, and we've got to do it as quickly as we can. So yes, buying off the NEM will be reasonable, and will continue to be required for a period of time. Yeah,
and I think I'm totally supportive of that, Matthew, because ultimately what I'm seeing just in the last 2 years is a change in the language of what our customers, how they evolve from the first few conversations they have at the start of their energy management process and getting familiar with what's happening on the spot to where they could be a year or two later and realizing the opportunities of what they can do with demand response and other things. And so So I guess
we got to be careful. As we drive forward, we don't break the system as well. Like that would also be very bad. We can't afford to go down a pathway of a consumer backlash where the price of energy gets so expensive that people turn off from the transition. So the concept that you just go out and we only sign PPAs, that might actually contribute to a negative outcome in the market, because we've got to get people to sign PPAs and we've got to get them to change the way they look at power and use power. We've got to do both. So if you really want to be a business that is really supporting the transition, you've got to get right behind renewables, and you've got to get right behind how you're using your power, demand response, peaking assets, solving the other part of the equation, the other part of the problem as well. Companies that do that are fully committed and doing very well, and that's where companies need to start look at the big picture. It's not just about signing PPA and offtakes; it's also about what to do with the rest.
Yeah. So we'll leave it at that, guys. This has been a really interesting discussion, and obviously one that's close to our heart. Matthew, Daniel, thanks very much.
I'd love to answer
on the
that
spot this week.
Sorry.
Okay. We're 41 minutes into it. Is there a disincentive? Okay, let's thought. Is there any disincentive for big retailers to move in your direction and empower customers to demand, manage, and respond? Go for it, Matthew.
The reason that's such a good one is because there is. You've got to have your market designed. Very deliberately, we've designed our retail business to be compatible with this transition. What's not compatible with the transition is vertically integrated structures. Because if I own the generation and I own the retail business, what's my motivation? I'm a business. We're here to make money. How do I make money? I make money through higher energy prices if I'm vertically integrated. And that's just the reality of that structure. So that vertically integrated structure is actually a disincentive to exactly what the market requires. So therefore you start to move away from demand response, because if you do demand response well, it lowers energy prices. Therefore my profits are lower because I own the supply chain. So yes, there is what I think a fundamental issue in the current structure of the market. And the way we're going to change that is get customers to see a different way.
And one that usually catches a lot of the market off guard is, why are you trying to educate me to reduce my usage when ultimately, as a retailer, you get paid more when I consume more. And so this goes back to that point about why education is so critical to where the market is at today, and just being able to provide this information in a transparent, open way so then they can understand how all these things come together is extremely important, because otherwise they'll be they'll stick with what they know, which is not necessarily always the best thing for them, but it's easy to just revert back to the norm and go back to fixed, peak, and off. And there's a new world of energy management and demand response and PPAs that can bring all this together.
Yeah. Sorry.
Okay, guys. That's good. Thank you. Thank you, Matthew. Thank you, Daniel. And thank you to the number of Chris's who have sent through some questions today.
Yes.
That's on the spot, guys. And we'll catch you all next week. Cheers, guys. See you.
Thanks, everybody.
See ya.
Yeah.